From the nonpartisan Maddy Institute and the California channel at the state capitol, this is a Maddy Policy Brief. Welcome back. We're talking with Judy Lin with Cal Matters, recently partnered with the LA Times and Capital Public Radio in a series about the looming challenges with California's public employee pension systems. Several years now, there's been a lot of talk about this unfunded liability, the shortfall between the benefits promised and the money set aside to meet those obligations. So let's talk about those numbers. What are we talking about in terms of numbers here?
Yeah, they're pretty staggering. When Governor Gray Davis approved the enhanced benefits in 1999, we had a surplus of $58 million. Today, according to the State Controller's Office, and this is as of 2014, all public pension systems are facing a $241 billion liability.
That's state and local.
That is state and local. It's all
but
public
you
pension
said
systems.
billion, not million.
Billion, yeah.
It's not a big number.
It's a big number. On top of that, I would add that a lot of these local.
By the way, just to put that into perspective for people, the state budget is what, a little over $100 billion, right?
Yes.
$110, $120 billion.
Yeah, the general fund is about 110.
Right, so it's twice the size of the annual state budget.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, just put it in perspective.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm sorry, I interrupted you. So we have this amount of debt. By the way, there's also something called public employee retirement health insurance. There's also an obligation there as well to pay for that. How much is that liability?
Yeah, that's in the tens of billions of dollars. The state alone has a $72 or $74 billion liability. Once a state employee retires, they get health benefits for themselves and their beneficiaries for life. Mm-hmm. It's a benefit that's worth about $20,000 a year.
Yeah, that's pretty significant. And I was reading in your articles, they're saying if you combine the public employee pension liability and the public employee health insurance liability, total 366. The tab is $366 billion.
Yeah,
that's a big amount of money. And it's also, that means it's increasing the amount taken out of the general fund each year, right? So that money can't be used for other things. It has to be used to pay off those obligations.
Yeah, we've seen that obligation just skyrocket. It's hundreds of millions of dollars each year and growing. That's less money that's available for schools and social services.
I want to say it was $5.4 billion, I think, in the last general fund allocation. So out of a $120 billion budget, $5 billion or so is to pay these pension obligations. It's not that you shouldn't pay those pension obligations, but just that number keeps going up. So why is it unfunded liability getting so big? Is it just problems with the investments?
There's that, yeah, and to be fair, looking back, you do have state governments that took pension holidays, that didn't make contributions when times were good.
These are local governments.
These are, yeah, and the state, and so there is that part. There's also the aspect that you talked about, the investments have not hit their marks. There's an assumption that they'll return 7.5%, and we've fallen below that.
Yeah, but if you look at the historical market average of what the market has done over the last 100 years, that's not an unreasonable number. But if it doesn't hit that, and then now we have a baby boom generation that's retiring, you get the double whammy. Yeah. And oh, by the way, they're living longer. Yeah. So retiring earlier, living longer with a higher payout, and there's the gap. So it sounds like it's pretty tough to deal with this issue on the state level, politics involved. What about the local level? You're hearing bankruptcies now in certain cities like Vallejo and San Bernardino and Stockton. Could we be seeing the public employee pension issue really be kind of shifting to the local level and saying that's where the fights are occurring? Yeah,
and so the state, obviously being so large, has the wherewithal to deal with the funding problems, the shortages, and so that the state is, by and large, other than less money for other things, can get by. Locals are in a different position, where $1 million will be chump change to the state. $1 million could.
I think they refer to it as budget dust.
So, yes, yes. $1 million can take a special water district under. Go into bankruptcy, and this is right now at a time when the economy is doing fairly well. We've seen good job growth in our state, and so if things are already getting tight now, what does that mean when the economy does turn.
Yeah, and in your series of articles, you mentioned San Jose, and their pension liability went from $73 million in 2001 to $245 million in 2012. The city had to lay off 25% of its workforce, so it has some local implications. Before we get out of this segment, I wanted to ask you about CalSTRS, the state teacher fund, which you've written about. Education's been getting some pretty healthy increases. Is that fund okay, or is it the same kind of shape as CalPERS? For a more in-depth analysis of this and other public policy issues important to Californians, please log on to our website at maddyinstitute.org and click on the Policy Analysis tab.